In a world where political affiliations and alliances can shape the future, one might wonder why anyone would turn down an opportunity that could elevate their platform, provide a stage for their voice, and increase their influence. The answer lies not in the potential for fame or recognition, but in the courage to stand firm in the face of disagreement, to choose integrity over opportunism. Rejecting such an invitation isn't merely a political statement. It's a personal choice, one that reflects the importance of speaking for what you believe in, even if it means stepping away from the limelight or losing support from certain quarters. At its core, it's an act of remaining true to oneself and one's convictions, no matter the external pressure. For some, such a decision could be a reminder that not all platforms are worth standing on, not all audiences are worth addressing, and not all endorsements are worth seeking. It's easy to be swept away by the allure of power and influence, but true leadership often requires the strength to refuse what seems like an opportunity, especially when that opportunity conflicts with the values you hold dear. At the heart of this choice is a question we should all consider. How far are we willing to go to maintain our integrity? How much are we willing to compromise in order to fit into a mold that doesn't align with our beliefs? The decision to decline an invitation to speak is not just a personal one, it reverberates throughout society. It challenges us to think critically about the individuals and ideologies we choose to support. It encourages us to scrutinize the platforms that we lend our voices to, asking whether they are truly aligned with the values that will lead to progress and positive change. In the end, rejecting such an invitation is more than a political move. It is a declaration. It's a commitment to speak with authenticity and to stay true to one's principles, even when the world around you might be pushing you in another direction. It's a reminder that leadership isn't just about being heard, it's about ensuring that your voice stands for something meaningful and just. Turning down an invitation to speak before a prominent political figure, especially when it comes with the promise of visibility, influence, and a potentially broader platform, is no small decision. At face value, one might think that such an opportunity, which could elevate someone's voice in national or international conversations, would be hard to pass up. However, choosing to reject that opportunity often speaks volumes about one's integrity and the strength of personal values that guide the individual. When someone turns down a platform offered by a controversial figure, it isn't merely a matter of political strategy. It's a personal declaration of commitment to one's moral compass. Integrity, in this context, means aligning one's actions with core values, even when the external world might pressure them to do otherwise. Integrity is not about playing the game according to others' rules. It is about ensuring that one's actions reflect what is true and honorable to oneself. In rejecting the invitation, the individual signals that their beliefs cannot be easily swayed by the lure of fame or power. The idea of fame and influence can be powerful in today's world, where recognition often leads to opportunities and, in some cases, financial and political gain. It can be tempting to take the easy route, to accept such an invitation, hoping that this will serve as a stepping stone to greater personal or professional success. However, for those who understand the weight of their words and actions, the price of compromising integrity can be too high. When someone stands firm in their beliefs, despite the external pressure, they are sending a message to their supporters and detractors alike that their principles are non-negotiable. It speaks to the understanding that true influence doesn't come from alignment with the powerful or popular, but from remaining steadfast in what is right, even when doing so may not yield immediate benefits. This is not a decision made out of arrogance or pride. It's made out of a deep understanding that actions speak louder than words, and the consequences of one's choices will reverberate far beyond the immediate situation. The courage to decline such an invitation also reflects a recognition that not all platforms are worth standing on. In a world rife with divisive ideologies and conflicting interests, it is essential to understand the importance of choosing the right stage. Platforms are not neutral. They come with their own set of values, biases, and implications. Being invited to speak on such a platform implies endorsement, whether intentional or not. To lend one's voice to a cause or a leader whose actions and words contradict one's values would be a betrayal of personal truth. Turning down the invitation, then, is not an act of cowardice, but an act of moral clarity. Integrity isn't just about being honest or ethical in the traditional sense. It is about aligning one's actions with the broader vision of justice, compassion, and human dignity. It's about holding on to the belief that one's influence should be used to inspire change for the better, rather than to amplify existing divisions or fuel harmful rhetoric. This commitment to integrity is essential, especially when navigating the complex terrain of political and social discourse, where powerful individuals can often dictate the narrative. The decision to decline an invitation, no matter how appealing, comes from a place of deep introspection and unwavering conviction. There's also a deeper personal connection that comes with standing by one's beliefs. When someone chooses not to engage with an individual or a cause that contradicts their values, they are not only preserving their integrity, but also affirming their own identity. Integrity is about knowing who you are and standing by that knowledge, regardless of external pressures. In this case, rejecting an invitation to speak is an affirmation of self-respect. It says, "I am who I am, and I will not allow myself to be swayed by the transient promises of power or fame." Moreover, turning down an invitation can be an act of self-preservation. When an individual chooses to stay true to their values, they protect themselves from the internal conflict that could arise from associating with something or someone they do not believe in. The emotional and psychological toll of compromising one's principles can be immense. The resentment, guilt, and inner turmoil that might follow could outweigh any short-term gain from accepting such an invitation. By declining, they avoid this conflict altogether, preserving not only their external reputation, but their internal peace. The decision also speaks to a broader societal need, the call for more leaders who are unafraid to prioritize their values over the superficial allure of power. In a world where political and social allegiances often shift to accommodate the demands of the powerful, it's easy to lose sight of the importance of authenticity and integrity. By rejecting such an invitation, the individual serves as an example, showing that one's voice and actions must reflect something much deeper than personal ambition. In the end, turning down an invitation like this is not a rejection of the world or a desire to isolate oneself from the broader conversation. Rather, it is an act of strength and clarity. It is about making a conscious decision to ensure that every word spoken and every action taken aligns with the values that define you. Integrity is about more than just making the right choice. It's about consistently choosing the path that reflects who you truly are, no matter the external circumstances. In rejecting the invitation, the individual reaffirms that principle matters more than position, and authenticity is the most valuable currency of all. In a world that often values power, influence, and political connections above all else, the decision to reject an invitation to speak before a high-profile political figure can be seen as a bold act of prioritizing principles over opportunism. Opportunities like this are rare and seemingly hard to come by, and in many cases, they appear to promise access to a world of influence and success that most people would find difficult to pass up. Yet when someone chooses not to take such an opportunity, it is a testament to their unwavering commitment to the values that guide their actions and decisions. The allure of power is undeniable. It can provide the platform to amplify one's voice, advance a cause, and gain the recognition that many seek in their careers and lives. For some, accepting such an invitation would be an obvious choice, driven by the desire to be heard and to potentially influence the course of important events. However, the person who rejects the invitation is not necessarily turning away from these things because they lack ambition or drive. Instead, they are making a conscious decision to resist the temptation of fleeting political gain in favor of something far more enduring, their own integrity and authenticity. Choosing principles over opportunism requires a deep sense of self-awareness and an understanding of what one truly stands for. It is easy, particularly in the current political climate, to be swept up in the excitement of being invited to share a stage with prominent figures, to be seen and heard in front of a broad audience, and to feel the rush of potential power and influence. However, the rejection of such opportunities reflects an individual's ability to resist these temptations and to focus on what is truly important, remaining true to their beliefs and standing firm in their convictions, even when the world around them is pushing them to do otherwise. This decision is not about a lack of ambition, but about a refusal to compromise on one's core values. It is a recognition that success, in its truest sense, is not measured by the number of powerful people one associates with or the amount of influence one can wield. Rather, true success is defined by the ability to look oneself in the mirror and know that one's actions align with what is morally right. In this context, the decision to decline an invitation becomes a demonstration of personal strength, a refusal to be swayed by external pressures that might lead one down a path of moral compromise. In a society where political gain often requires compromise, and where alliances are frequently formed based on convenience rather than shared values, the rejection of such an invitation sends a strong message about the importance of remaining steadfast in one's principles. Politics is often seen as a game of negotiation and compromise, where the end justifies the means and where moral lines are blurred for the sake of expediency. However, choosing principles over opportunism challenges this notion. It asks the question, at what cost does political success come? Is it worth sacrificing one's ethical compass to achieve influence? When someone decides not to accept an invitation from a figure whose actions or ideologies contradict their own values, they are making a stand for what is right, even if that stand doesn't lead to immediate gain. In rejecting the opportunity to speak at such an event, they are choosing a path of personal authenticity over political convenience. They are saying that their voice is not for sale, that their principles are not up for negotiation, and that they will not compromise their beliefs for the sake of power or recognition. This is an incredibly difficult stance to take, especially in a world where political success often seems tied to the very compromises that someone might find distasteful. The act of rejecting the invitation is a form of resistance, not just to the allure of power, but also to the broader societal pressures that often push individuals into situations where their values are tested. It is a way of saying, I will not be bought or co-opted by those who do not align with my values. I will remain true to myself, regardless of the political climate. It is a testament to the strength of character and the courage to stand alone, if necessary, rather than succumb to the temptation of aligning with those who do not reflect one's own ethical framework. In the face of political pressure, many people find themselves making compromises in the hope of securing short-term benefits. However, the consequences of such compromises can be profound. The person who chooses to prioritize principles over opportunism recognizes that the long-term impact of their choices far outweighs any immediate gains. While they may lose out on opportunities in the short term, they maintain their integrity and set a standard for others to follow. They understand that lasting change, whether in politics or in society, is not driven by opportunistic alliances or the pursuit of personal gain, but by individuals who are willing to stand firm in their values regardless of the circumstances. Rejecting the invitation also sends a message to the broader public about the importance of choosing authenticity over political expediency. It calls attention to the need for more individuals in positions of power who are willing to make decisions based on principles rather than what is most advantageous at the moment. In doing so, it challenges the status quo and encourages a more ethical and conscientious approach to leadership. Ultimately, the decision to reject such an invitation is about more than just resisting temptation. It is about standing up for what one believes in, even when doing so may not lead to immediate rewards. It is a reminder that true leadership is not about accumulating power or gaining influence for its own sake, but about staying true to one's values and ensuring that one's actions reflect a commitment to justice, fairness, and integrity. In a world where opportunism often trumps principle, the person who chooses authenticity over political gain becomes a beacon of hope for those who believe that true success is found in staying true to one's values, no matter the cost. When someone declines an invitation to speak before a powerful political figure, particularly one whose ideologies and actions are widely regarded as controversial or divisive, the decision is often far more than a personal one. It is a statement, a clear declaration that not every platform is worth taking advantage of, especially when the ideas being promoted do not align with the individual's own values or ethical beliefs. By refusing to engage with a platform that represents ideas they cannot support, the individual sends a powerful message about the importance of authenticity, integrity, and responsibility in leadership. In today's world, where political and social movements often veer toward extremes, many individuals and organizations find themselves invited to share their voice on stages that are tied to ideologies they fundamentally disagree with. The allure of exposure, the possibility of expanding one's influence, and the opportunity to be heard on a larger stage can be powerful motivators. However, those who reject such invitations show the courage to acknowledge that not every audience or platform is deserving of their time or attention, particularly if doing so might inadvertently lend credibility to ideas or movements that they find harmful or misaligned with their own principles. In rejecting the invitation, there is an implicit understanding that speaking on certain platforms may inadvertently endorse views that are toxic, dangerous, or divisive. Every public appearance, every speech, every word shared has weight. In today's interconnected world, the consequences of association are amplified. Platforms are not neutral spaces. They carry the ideological baggage of their leaders, their audiences, and the causes they represent. By stepping onto a platform, especially one associated with controversial figures or movements, an individual is often seen as endorsing the underlying ideologies being promoted, regardless of the specific message they might intend to deliver. This is the heart of why refusing the invitation becomes an act of moral clarity and responsibility. It's easy to assume that the purpose of speaking at such events is simply to share one's own message. However, in practice, it's much more complicated. When someone accepts an invitation from a leader or organization known for controversial, divisive, or ethically questionable positions, the act of participation in itself may be interpreted as support or validation of those ideas. The audience's perception of the speaker may shift from one of neutrality to one of alignment. Even if the individual's speech is meant to address an entirely different topic, the act of sharing a platform with a controversial figure often overshadows the content of their own message. This phenomenon is particularly true in the age of sound bites, social media, and the instant amplification of every event or appearance. What is said during the speech may be lost in the noise of the broader ideological conflict that surrounds the platform. Choosing to stay away from such platforms is an exercise in discernment, recognizing that being associated with certain individuals or causes might send a harmful message. It speaks to the reality that some causes are so entrenched in ideologies that one cannot separate the platform from the people or movements supporting it. By rejecting the invitation, the individual makes a statement that they refuse to be part of an ecosystem that could potentially normalize harmful rhetoric or ideologies. This refusal is not an act of avoidance. Rather, it is an act of resistance. It is the choice to protect one's reputation, to preserve the integrity of their beliefs, and to avoid contributing to the legitimization of ideas they cannot in good conscience support. The decision to decline the invitation also reflects a deeper understanding of the nature of power and influence. To engage with controversial figures or movements is, in essence, to give them a degree of legitimacy. The presence of a respected or well-known individual on a particular platform can lend credibility to that platform's goals, no matter how indirect that association might be. This is why choosing to not endorse controversial ideologies through one's participation becomes an act of moral leadership. It demonstrates that influence and voice should be wielded with care, responsibility, and consideration of the broader consequences. A person who understands the responsibility of their own platform will choose, when necessary, to remain silent rather than to contribute to the amplification of ideas that can harm individuals or communities. In many ways, refusing to endorse controversial ideologies is a form of accountability, not just to oneself, but also to society. In a time when the lines between right and wrong, just and unjust, can often become blurred in the heat of political battles, the ability to take a stand against harmful ideologies is a powerful form of resistance. It underscores the idea that standing by one's values is more important than seeking acceptance from controversial political figures or movements. In doing so, individuals who refuse to endorse harmful ideologies show the world that it is possible to achieve success, recognition, and influence without compromising one's core ethical beliefs. Additionally, by declining an invitation to speak on such a platform, the individual also serves as an example for others. The message is clear. True leadership is not about being seen on any stage. It's about standing on the right stage. It's about using one's voice, presence, and platform to promote values that align with justice, compassion, and equality. It's a reminder that the causes we choose to support, the platforms we choose to engage with, and the ideas we lend our voice to all matter. Leadership is not just about being heard, it's about ensuring that the message you share resonates with truth and goodness. In the end, refusing to speak at such an event is a powerful reminder that our values are not for sale. It emphasizes the importance of choosing platforms that reflect our ideals and speaking out against those that seek to perpetuate divisiveness or harm. By rejecting the invitation, the individual affirms that they will not lend their voice to a cause they do not believe in, and in doing so, they stand firm in their commitment to promoting a world that aligns with their vision of justice and integrity. Leadership is not simply about managing people or making decisions that benefit one's own career or public standing. True leadership goes beyond popularity or the pursuit of short-term success. It is about making decisions rooted in moral conviction, guided by principles that uphold justice, integrity, and responsibility. It involves recognizing the weight of one's actions and their broader implications, even when such decisions might not align with popular opinion or immediate gain. The refusal to accept an offer or an invitation, especially one that could advance personal or professional interests, speaks volumes about the kind of leadership that is driven by personal accountability rather than by the need for approval or external validation. Personal accountability in leadership is about consistently holding oneself to a set of standards that reflect one's core values, irrespective of the circumstances. It is easy for individuals in positions of power to get swept up in the demands of their roles, to prioritize the pursuit of success, or to chase after the approval of others. But true leadership requires a different approach, a willingness to make difficult decisions, even when they are unpopular or come at a personal cost. This means choosing to do what is right rather than what is easy, and holding oneself accountable for the impact of those decisions. It is about being clear-eyed and courageous enough to recognize when an action might compromise one's integrity and making the difficult choice to stand firm in one's beliefs, regardless of the consequences. Rejecting an offer or invitation to speak at an event or join a particular cause is a decision that requires immense courage. It is a rejection of the temptation to conform to societal pressures or political trends that might be in line with personal gain or greater visibility. Instead, it is a commitment to higher standards of leadership, one that holds the individual accountable not just to their own interests, but to the values they wish to represent. This type of leadership isn't swayed by popularity contests or the allure of power. It is driven by the conviction that what is morally right and ethically sound should guide every decision, regardless of external influence. The act of rejecting an invitation, particularly when it comes from a figure or a group whose actions or ideologies do not align with one's own moral compass, reflects an individual's refusal to compromise on their principles. Such decisions often require standing alone or even facing public backlash. It can be tempting to follow the path of least resistance, to accept the offer and conform to what others might expect. However, true leaders do not follow the crowd. They understand the weight of their influence, and they take responsibility for how their choices will affect others. By choosing to reject the invitation, they show that their leadership is rooted in values that go beyond self-interest and the pursuit of fame or power. True leadership is also about understanding the power of association. When someone accepts an invitation to speak or engage with a platform, they are often associated with the ideas, the people, and the movements that platform represents. In many cases, a speaker's presence on a particular stage is seen as an endorsement of the platform's ideologies or goals. Even if the speaker has a different message, their association with controversial figures or divisive causes can dilute the impact of their own words and message. In rejecting the invitation, a leader makes a clear statement about their unwillingness to lend credibility to causes or individuals whose values they cannot support. This demonstrates that their leadership is not about gaining popularity or securing an alliance with powerful figures, but about staying true to the values they hold dear. At the heart of leadership through personal accountability is the willingness to face discomfort or personal sacrifice for the sake of a greater good. In many cases, rejecting an invitation could mean passing up an opportunity for increased influence, visibility, or access to key decision makers. For some, this might feel like a missed opportunity, a decision that leads to an immediate loss. However, for true leaders, the price of personal compromise is far too high. They understand that the integrity of their leadership cannot be bought or traded for short-term rewards. In the long run, it is their consistent adherence to ethical standards that will define their legacy, not the number of platforms they speak on or the people they align themselves with. This long-term view of leadership helps them navigate difficult choices and focus on making decisions that contribute to a lasting positive impact. Moreover, personal accountability in leadership extends beyond just making the right decisions in difficult moments. It also involves a willingness to be self-reflective and self-critical. Leaders must continuously examine their own actions and motivations, ensuring that they remain grounded in their values and are not swayed by external pressures or fleeting desires. Rejecting an invitation in such a context is not just a matter of making a single ethical choice. It is part of a larger commitment to lead by example, to consistently make choices that are aligned with one's higher standards, and to accept responsibility for the impact of one's decisions. In this sense, true leadership is about more than just the decisions one makes in the public eye. It is about the quiet moments of introspection and personal responsibility that shape those decisions. Leaders who act with personal accountability are not afraid to confront the uncomfortable truths about their own motivations, biases, or weaknesses. They are committed to self-improvement, to ensuring that their leadership is not shaped by external pressures, but by their own sense of responsibility to others and to the greater good. Ultimately, rejecting an offer because it conflicts with one's moral beliefs is an affirmation of leadership through personal accountability. It demonstrates that a true leader is not defined by the opportunities they accept, but by the principles they refuse to compromise on. In doing so, they set a standard for others to follow, a standard that values integrity over success, authenticity over appearance, and moral conviction over popularity. It is a commitment to lead not just through words, but through actions that inspire trust, respect, and long-lasting change. True leadership is about standing firm in one's values, even when it is difficult, and remaining accountable to those values above all else. In today's complex political and social landscape, the decision to reject an invitation to speak before a controversial or divisive figure carries profound significance. It is not just a personal choice made by the individual, it is an act that calls for a broader societal reflection. It challenges us to think critically about the people, ideologies, and causes we choose to support, and it encourages us to assess whether our actions, our words, and the platforms we endorse truly serve the greater good. This decision, though seemingly small or isolated, has the potential to spark a much-needed conversation about responsibility, integrity, and the consequences of aligning ourselves with certain individuals or movements. One of the most important aspects of this rejection is that it forces individuals and society at large to critically evaluate the platforms they engage with. In an age where social media, political figures, and public personalities can dominate discourse and shape societal norms, it is easy to get swept up in the momentum of popular movements or the charisma of influential leaders. However, the rejection of such an invitation serves as a reminder that not every platform is worthy of support, no matter how powerful or seemingly influential it might appear. It reminds us that the ideas and values promoted by those we choose to align with matter significantly, and that simply being associated with a certain cause or person can carry weight, whether we intend it to or not. When an individual rejects an invitation from a controversial figure, it implicitly challenges us to consider what we are endorsing when we engage with certain people or platforms. Are we supporting ideas that we believe will lead to positive change? Are we elevating leaders whose values align with justice, equality, and truth? Or are we simply supporting them because it serves our interests or seems politically expedient? The decision to decline an invitation forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about our own motivations and the consequences of our actions. It compels us to ask whether we are willing to stand by our values, even when doing so might mean turning down opportunities or facing criticism. This call for critical reflection is not just about rejecting one individual or one platform, it is about engaging in a broader conversation about the nature of influence and the ethics of association. In a world where visibility and recognition are often sought after at any cost, it is easy to forget that our actions and affiliations can either build up or tear down the societal fabric we all share. Supporting a controversial figure or platform can inadvertently lend them legitimacy, regardless of whether we agree with their every position. By rejecting such offers, the individual is not just making a statement about their own beliefs, they are also encouraging others to think critically about the choices they make and the alliances they form. This reflection also extends beyond the immediate political or social context. It asks us to look inward and consider the ways in which we contribute to broader societal movements, both actively and passively. Every choice we make, whether it's who we vote for, who we endorse, or who we choose to support, has a ripple effect on the communities around us. The platforms we engage with help shape public discourse, and aligning ourselves with those who promote harmful ideologies can perpetuate cycles of division, hate, and inequality. By rejecting an invitation from a controversial figure, the individual is reminding us that we must constantly ask ourselves whether we are contributing to the solution or reinforcing the problem. This kind of reflection calls for more than just a surface-level analysis of the figures and movements we support. It demands that we dig deeper into the values and long-term goals of the platforms we engage with. Are we merely seeking temporary gains, or are we investing in causes that reflect a broader, more inclusive vision for the future? Are we supporting leaders who stand for truth and integrity, or are we willing to overlook their flaws because of what they can offer us in the short term? The decision to reject an invitation encourages us to pause and consider whether our choices are in alignment with the world we want to create. A world where justice, equality, and compassion are prioritized over self-interest and convenience. Furthermore, this decision acts as a critique of the often shallow and transactional nature of modern politics and media. In many cases, individuals or organizations are quick to align themselves with powerful figures or influential platforms, thinking that doing so will grant them access to greater influence or visibility. The allure of power and recognition can cloud our judgment, leading us to overlook the ethical implications of our associations. However, rejecting such invitations forces us to rethink the transactional nature of modern influence. It reminds us that there is more to leadership and influence than simply gaining a louder voice or more followers. It calls us to reevaluate our priorities and ask whether we are truly contributing to the greater good or simply feeding into a system that perpetuates harmful ideologies and practices. The decision to decline an invitation is also a challenge to complacency. In a world where division, polarization, and misinformation are rampant, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that we don't need to make difficult choices. Many people might rationalize their support for a controversial figure by saying, "I'm not endorsing everything they stand for, I'm just trying to make my voice heard." However, this kind of passive engagement can have a far-reaching impact. By actively choosing to reject platforms that promote harmful ideologies, individuals encourage others to do the same, and collectively, society is challenged to raise its standards for what it will and will not accept in public discourse. This creates a ripple effect that can gradually shift the broader cultural narrative toward one that values integrity, accountability, and a commitment to the greater good. Ultimately, the decision to reject an invitation from a controversial figure is not just a personal choice. It is a call for critical reflection on the choices we make as a society. It encourages us to reconsider the figures and causes we choose to support, and it challenges us to question whether our actions truly align with the values we hold dear. By standing firm in the face of temptation and choosing to prioritize ethical principles over personal gain, we are called to build a more conscientious, thoughtful, and just society. One that encourages reflection, accountability, and most importantly, a deep commitment to the greater good. In a world increasingly defined by the pursuit of visibility and recognition, it's easy to forget that true leadership is not simply about being heard or amassing influence. Leadership, at its core, is about authenticity, remaining true to one's principles, values, and vision, even when faced with the temptations of power, fame, or political expediency. Rejecting an invitation to speak at a platform or event associated with controversial figures or divisive ideologies serves as a powerful reaffirmation of authenticity in leadership. It underscores the idea that leadership is not a mere exercise in visibility. It is about using one's platform and influence to advance ideas that align with justice, integrity, and progress. At a time when public figures are often judged by the sheer number of their appearances, the prominence of their connections, or the volume of their followers, it's easy to mistake popularity for genuine leadership. However, the rejection of an offer to speak or participate in an event sends a much-needed message that leadership must go beyond mere exposure. It must be rooted in a commitment to authenticity. In rejecting such invitations, the individual shows that their voice cannot be easily co-opted for the sake of convenience, influence, or an association that does not reflect their core values. This decision exemplifies that leadership is about staying true to one's moral compass, even when doing so might cost them opportunities, recognition, or alliances that others may deem valuable. Authenticity in leadership requires a deep understanding of the power one holds and the responsibility that comes with it. The decision to decline an invitation, particularly when it involves engaging with controversial figures, represents an understanding of the weight of one's words and actions. Leadership is not about simply taking the stage or being seen. It is about ensuring that the message conveyed is one that will advance positive change and contribute to the greater good. Authentic leaders are not swayed by the allure of power or by the immediate rewards that may come with aligning themselves with powerful individuals or movements. Instead, they choose to be guided by their own principles, ensuring that their message is one that reflects a commitment to justice, equality, and progress. Rejecting the invitation is also a declaration that leadership cannot be detached from the values that underpin it. It serves as a reminder that true leadership is about more than just filling a space or using a platform to voice an opinion. It is about ensuring that the voice being shared is one that aligns with ethical standards and works toward the betterment of society. By refusing to lend their voice to a platform that promotes harmful or divisive ideologies, the leader takes a stand against using leadership for personal gain or self-promotion, and instead chooses to align their influence with causes that will create positive societal change. The rejection is a reflection of the leader's belief that being heard is meaningless if the message does not promote progress, justice, and collective well-being. The choice to stand firm in one's authenticity in the face of external pressure is not always easy, especially when the invitation comes with the promise of increased influence or greater visibility. The temptation to accept such offers can be overwhelming, particularly in a society that often equates success with exposure and recognition. However, an authentic leader understands that leadership is not a transaction. It's not about what can be gained in the moment, but about staying true to one's vision and the impact they wish to have on the world. Authenticity in leadership is grounded in the belief that the integrity of one's message is more important than the platform on which it is delivered. Furthermore, rejecting the invitation affirms that leadership is not a matter of optics. In today's world, where media and social platforms often prioritize sensationalism over substance, it is easy to fall into the trap of prioritizing the image of being a leader rather than actually living out the values that leadership entails. Authentic leaders resist this temptation. They recognize that their influence comes not from the stage they stand on, but from the clarity, consistency, and truth of the message they deliver. Rejecting an invitation to speak on a platform that may compromise their message is a reminder that authenticity cannot be faked, and that true leadership is about staying true to one's values, regardless of how much attention or recognition one might gain from conforming to popular narratives. By choosing to reject an offer that conflicts with their values, the individual reaffirms the idea that leadership requires moral courage. It's easy to go along with the flow, to accept an invitation simply because it's flattering or advantageous. But true leaders, those who prioritize authenticity, are not afraid to take a step back, to question their involvement, and to make difficult choices when necessary. In doing so, they not only uphold their own integrity, but also model for others the importance of choosing authenticity over conformity. This serves as a powerful lesson for those who look up to them, showing that leadership is not about following trends or pandering to the crowd, but about standing firm in what one believes to be right, even in the face of adversity. Rejecting the invitation also highlights the idea that leadership is not just about individuals, it is about collective responsibility. Authentic leaders understand that their actions and decisions have a ripple effect on others. When they make the difficult choice to decline an opportunity that does not align with their principles, they are not just preserving their own integrity, they are encouraging others to consider the consequences of their own choices and to reflect on the platforms they choose to support. In doing so, they inspire others to hold fast to their own values and to reject affiliations or opportunities that might compromise their integrity. In the long run, leadership through authenticity contributes to the broader goal of societal progress. Leaders who prioritize authenticity are more likely to drive change that aligns with the collective good, rather than being swayed by self-serving interests or momentary political gains. By staying true to their core values and using their platform to promote causes that matter, these leaders inspire others to follow suit, creating a ripple effect that contributes to a more just, equitable, and compassionate society. Ultimately, rejecting the invitation is a powerful reaffirmation of what it means to be a true leader. It demonstrates that leadership is not about chasing external validation or seeking power for its own sake. It is about ensuring that the message you bring aligns with the principles you hold dear and using your voice to promote progress, fairness, and justice. True leadership is grounded in authenticity, and it is only by staying true to that authenticity that leaders can truly have a meaningful and lasting impact.